Well, 7 o'clock. It's early, but it's time. Episode 24, Exploring Scripture. Today, doubt. Let's have a look. Okay, well, hope you have your coffee. Yeah, I have a Starbucks mug, although it's not Starbucks, it's just regular coffee, but it will do, right? I hope you've got your coffee or your beverage of choice to get your juices flowing this morning. Today we're going to talk about something that I think all of us can identify with. Doubt. It can range all the way from just a twinge all the way to spiritually debilitating. If you remember Thomas Didymus, I just like saying his name, Thomas Didymus. You might recognize him as Doubting Thomas and as one of the 12. And he doubted all the way to the very end. Would not believe that Jesus was risen until he stuck his hands in the holes where the nails were. Remember that? So we'll probably read that scripture. But that's just one of many people who doubted. So we're going to take doubt, which is a pretty common plight, if you will. And I'm going to use that opportunity to show you a new, well, maybe not a new, but a feature I don't think we've shown on the show before in Logos. And Terry, with your free version, if you could tell me if this option exists. By the way, speaking of free version, you can get Logos, which is the tool that we use, at logos.com/basic. That's it, logos.com/basic. Download that, install it. Gives you, I think, something on the order of 25 books. It doesn't give you the NIV, which is the version that we like to follow. It does give you one that's called the Lexham English Bible, which on the surface looks like a good translation. It doesn't match exactly, but you're welcome to follow along, and I think you'll find that they're pretty close. Or if you want the NIV, $9.99, just download it. It's very inexpensive. So anyway, shall we jump over to Logos and have a look? Okay, so most of you may, or those of you who use Logos, will recognize this as the home screen. This is the screen that you see when you have cleared your desktop. What I'm going to do is use a feature that I don't think I've shown on here before, and it's called, I'm going to need to get to the right menu here, Guides. It's a topic guide. Impressed? I'm not so far, but let's key in doubt, which suddenly I have because it's synced from my laptop where I was doing my research this morning. Let's click the go button and look at all the stuff it found. Now this, if you are unaware, is my collection of books is growing, but it's about 4,500 books. Now, to hire somebody to go through all of those books, I mean, I don't even know how big of a room it would take. How big of a room would it take to store 4,500 books? I don't know. Quite a big one, I would imagine, right? But to hire somebody to go in through all of those books and say, show me all the articles that you find on doubt. Well, how long would that take? It would take a very long time. But Logos chops them all up and puts them in data sets. That's what the term they use. And so when we do a search for something like doubt, instantly it comes with a whole host of related articles in different books in the library and scriptures and things of that nature. So I really, really dig it. So anyway, moving on. Let's look very quickly here at some of the things that I saw that stood out to me when I was going through this topic guide. And the first thing that stood out to me was this word indecision. That's similar to doubt, right? But let's look and see what The Dictionary of Bible Themes says about indecision. It says it's the uncertainty, hesitation, and doubt reflect a failure of the basic human ability to choose. They reveal an internal debate and a lack of conviction. Hello? That's what we're looking for, right? Conviction. We thrive on conviction. We develop, if we're doing it right, we develop our convictions based on the Bible, right? And not something that I say. Please don't develop your convictions on what I'm telling you. Be like the Bereans that we covered many episodes ago. The Bereans were considered to be of more noble character, and you can find them in the book of Acts, I think chapter 17, verse 10-ish, somewhere around that area. Just do a search for Bereans. You'll see it. I think that's right, but I've been wrong before. So again, I'm pretty familiar with the Bible, but those references, my brain will just not latch onto them. So look it up. So they had conviction, but they looked up what Paul said to see if it was true in the scriptures. And so they were considered to have more noble character than some of the other believers. And so don't take what I say for granted. Don't go off my convictions. Develop your own. The way you do that, get in the Word. Moving on. Let's see what it says about the nature of doubt. Doubt leads to insecurity and lack of trust concerning God's willingness and ability to deliver his people. It also leads to a fear of people and situations. Ooh, interesting. Fear of people? Well, I have that problem sometimes. I don't do well in crowds. Terry says the topic guide is available, limited to your library, of course. Yeah, obviously. Yeah, so it's not gonna find stuff that you don't have the books for. So thank you for that, sis. And anyway, so this fear of people, I don't do well in crowds. And the reason why I don't do well in crowds is because my brain, having been in combat, is wired now to look at faces of people and assess whether they are friend or foe. Because, well, many years ago, my life depended on that. I have gotten better at not scanning faces in crowds. And I've just gotten better at trusting that God has got my back. And when he calls me home, I'm going home. Till then, I'm going to depend on him. And so I don't stress over the hypervigilance so much that I used to have. And so situations do cause me trouble sometimes. I think that's true for all of us. But really, I think the key here is it's the insecurity or lack of trust concerning God's willingness and ability to deliver his people. Well, God isn't fixing my situation, so does God care? Does he notice? Is he aware of me? Am I not in line with God's plan and purpose? All of those doubts start to creep in. In reality, it might be like Job, where none of that applies. God was very much paying attention and just allowing Job to go through what he needed to go through to show his conviction. Remember, if you've ever read the account of Job, Job has strong convictions. Sometimes he kind of strayed off the reservation a little bit with his attitude, but in the end, he held fast. And as a result, he was more prosperous at the end than he was at the beginning. So do we doubt sometimes that God is willing and able to deliver us? Well, we have to be careful about that. Wonder if we start to doubt God's abilities, or if he even exists. Really, that's, a way that Satan uses to fill our heads with a lack of faith to discourage us from believing, right? So if you understand things, if you begin with hopefully with these shows, your mindset, if you've been following along, is beginning to shift. It's beginning to change, and you're beginning to see things in terms of what I call spiritual warfare, right? So there are weapons in war, right? And there are shields, and there are defenses against these weapons. And so if you begin to learn what these weapons are and how to defend against them and how to fortify against them, Satan has less of a foothold, because you know his playbook. You know, I always think about football. If the opposing team had our playbook, they would know what our plays are, especially if they could read our hand signals and all of that. They would know what the plays are, and they would know how to defend against them. And it's very similar with spiritual warfare. So that's all of that. But you know what? This wouldn't be a qualified show if we just went off of dictionaries and commentaries and stuff. So let's get into scripture, shall we? Let's look at some scripture. So let's get into, scroll down a little bit further. Oh, this is so small you can't even read it. My apologies. Let me make this bigger. Sorry about that. So anyway, I'm scrolling down, and we get to this section called related verses. And I'm going to save this as a passage list, which is a document, which I will make bigger so you can see, a document of all of the passages that are tangentially or maybe even directly related to the topic at hand, which is doubt. And I have made this topic guide, doubt, as a document. And those documents in Logos exist in your documents folder. And this is the whole list of all of the documents you've created. Right at the very top is the most recent one. But I could go to, what is that? That's a passage list. Oh, that's creating a new passage list. So belay my last. So all of your documents are listed here, and of course you can search for them. So this passage list I can come back to at some point in time and keep studying if I want to, or highlight, or do whatever I want to do. I could also, I think, print. Can I print this? Print and export. Yes, I can. So I can print. Oh, it brought up a window on my other monitor. Let me shrink that down to a reasonable size. Pull that over here. You can see here is all, I think, it looks like 2 pages of doubt verses. And I could print it on my printer, or I could select Microsoft Print to PDF, save it as a PDF, and send it to you. So if you want this, let me know. I'll fire it off to you. You can let me know in the chat room, or you can use these contact methods here. Twitter and Facebook are at Disciples Life TV, and yes, you can use the @ symbol in Facebook to search for this show or this network specifically, Disciples Life TV, or use that hashtag, or you can just do it the traditional way and send me an email at feedback@discipleslifetv. Let me know if you want this, and I will fire it to you with bells and whistles, so you can do your own study. We're not going to cover all of them. We don't have time. In fact, we're over halfway through our show already. So let's stop and get right back into the scriptures. Okay. Let's find the one here's one where Peter doubts. Let me scroll up a little bit. It's in Matthew. This is the account of Peter getting out of the boat. Okay, so up here in chapter 14, verse 22, immediately Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed them, he went up into the mountain by himself to pray. Later that night, he was there alone, and the boat was already... Yep, okay, good. Just didn't need to check on something. Sorry about that. And the boat was already a considerable distance from the land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, so they've been out all night long, tired, I'm sure. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. When his disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and they cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid. And here comes Peter. Peter's one of those guys, my opinion, great guy. But sometimes he says things that don't quite make sense. Sometimes they're downright comical. So here's one, in my opinion, but Jesus takes advantage of it. He says, Lord, if it is you, tell me to come to you on the water. Let me walk out on the water. Well, gosh, who's ever walked on water? He sees this apparition that claims to be Jesus, and the voice is familiar. Peter says, well, if you are who you say you are, tell me to come out on the water, and I will come to you. Well, all right, that's fine. And Jesus says, come. And Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and began to sink, and cried out, Lord, save me. Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. You of little faith. Now remember, Peter is the one that Jesus gives the keys to the kingdom. We haven't covered that yet. But he puts Peter in charge of the first century church. We haven't covered that either. But we'll get there. And he says, why did you doubt? So the moment, I mean, think about this. Peter is in the middle of a miracle, right? He's walking on water towards Jesus. And then the wind comes and he gets distracted and he begins to doubt. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe this isn't, maybe I'm hallucinating because I'm really tired. And he begins to sink. And Jesus says, why did you doubt? I was here the whole time. Why doubt? I'm talking to you. So even in the middle of Jesus working, or in the middle of God working, we can still hold on to that doubt or regain that doubt, even though we see evidence to the contrary. You know, you doubt Jesus exists, you doubt God exists. All you have to do is look around at nature. The trees, the birds, the animals, all of that. Where did that come from? Well, you know, some might say, well, you know, we're all related, and Darwin said that we would all, you know, we have a common gene pool and we came out of a puddle of goo. And, well, I don't buy that theory. I think his theory of evolution is a little bit specious. No, it's a lot specious. His theory of adaptation, that's a whole different matter and a whole different topic for a whole different show. So let's stay focused. Back to scripture. So why did you doubt? And climbed into the boat, and they carried on. So let's see who else doubted. Here is old Didymus. This is Jesus appears to Thomas. This is after he was resurrected. And Didymus said, I'm not going to believe until I see it with my own eyes. How many times have we said that? I'll believe it when I see it. Right? So here's Thomas, also known as Didymus. One of the 12 was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, we have seen the Lord. But what does he say? He said to them, unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were and put my hand into his side, I will not believe. So here is a disciple who later becomes an apostle who doubts. Now that seems rather contradictory, but let's give him a little bit of credit and say, pretty rare that anybody was raised from the dead. Now, we do know that Lazarus was raised from the dead, and, you know, Jesus rescued a couple of people, some kids, right? So I would imagine that Thomas was aware that Jesus had the power to bring people back from the dead. Hopefully he witnessed some of that. Maybe he wasn't around. Maybe he was off doing something else. So when Jesus appears to the rest of the apostles, Didymus says, I'm not going to believe it till I see it. So, a week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, peace be with you. Then he said to Thomas, he heard what Thomas said. So if you think Jesus isn't paying attention just because he's not in the room, apparently, maybe you ought to think again. He says, put your fingers here. Or your finger here. See my hands? Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe. Thomas said to him, my Lord and my God. So Thomas finally got the picture. But here's what Jesus says. Jesus said, because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. That's us. I haven't had a one-on-one conversation with the Messiah coming through my office door and sitting on my couch and saying, Scott, how are you today? Peace be with you. That's never happened. Boy, sometimes I really wish I could have that conversation with him and get some understanding or ask some questions or hear what he has to say, right? But do I doubt that he exists? No, I firmly believe. I have that conviction we talked about earlier, that not only does he exist, but he has the power to save and to help us be the very best we can be. He set the pace. He set the bar. He is Lord of heaven and earth, right? And so I don't doubt. Now, sometimes when I'm in the middle of a difficult circumstance, I ask myself, why did this happen? Am I being disciplined? Which is usually my first reaction, probably yours too. Or is this just a test of my faith? Am I going to be faithful through this? I'd like to think at the end of this, I will not only have been proven faithful, but even gain more faith, because I believe that God has my best interest at heart. So, and we could go on. There's loads of scriptures in here. Loads. There's Romans. So whatever you believe about these things, keep it between yourself and God. Blessed is the one who does not condemn himself by what he approves. But whoever has doubts is condemned if they eat, because their eating is not from faith, and everything that does not come from faith is sin. So, I mean, this is a very deep subject. Here's another one that I would like to point out. In James, let's just look at that. I mean, this is the verse, but I like reading it out of the Bible. In James chapter 1, verse 6. But when you ask, you must believe and not doubt, because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Such a person is double-minded and unstable in all they do. So if we ask God for things to rescue us or to give us the things that we need, and then we doubt, we're not sure, we're not persuaded, what does the Bible say? We're double-minded. We're unstable. We're not going to get what we want or what we're asking for. So when you ask for things, Jesus says, whatever you ask in my name, God will give you. Now, does that mean you can ask for winning lottery numbers from Jesus? Well, you can ask, but I'm not aware of anybody that's ever worked for. And I would say the caveat there is, if it is in keeping with God's will, right? That you have what he wants and he thinks it's best for you, he will give it to you. You know, I've been blessed immensely in my house and in my finances, in my relationship with my wife and my kids, all of them. They've all been very big blessings. I want for nothing. Even this show, in my opinion, is a blessing, because not only do I have great quiet times. I'm pretty good at having quiet times. I've been doing it for a couple of decades. But this show makes me take that quiet time even deeper. You know, if you read something for a half an hour, okay, that's great. You've read, you've been in the Word, checkpoint met. But if you read it in such a way that you then have to turn around and explain what you read, well, that's a whole different thing. Because now you have to fully grasp it, and you have to articulate it. You have to put it in your own words. And so these quiet times, because of this show, have gotten even deeper, and they're more, what's the word? They've deepened my convictions. They've reinforced how true the word is. It's grown my faith, and all because you're watching. And hopefully you're getting this same thing, the enrichment of your spiritual walk out of this show that I'm getting. You know, again, I don't want this to be me talking into a microphone and looking into the blank eye of a camera. I don't get much out of being in this room by myself talking to apparently, literally nobody, but except for you. I know you're listening. But if I keep in mind that this is reaching out to the whole internet and the whole world, well, that means I really better know what I'm talking about. I better pay attention, because what I'm about to say, a lot of people are going to hear. And hopefully it's encouraging. Hopefully it's challenging, because we need to grow. But hopefully it advances the kingdom in such a way. It plants seeds. That's the whole point. And so I digress. I want to close. We got about 2.5 minutes to go. I want to close with an experience from my life where doubt had a very great fertile soil to crop up. So, a disciple in the Navy, just short of 17 years. I was going for 20 because most of you know if you do 20, you're eligible for retirement. So I was only just a handful of months really away from retirement. I was diagnosed with PTSD, which then disqualified me. Also a couple of other things, sleep apnea, whatever, nobody cares, but a couple of conditions that made me unfit for duty in the military. So I had to appeal to the Physical Evaluation Board to either remain on active duty until I can retire, because I'd come this far, or retire me early. Well, as it turns out, after some period of time, it seems to me, Emily, you could probably correct me, the results came back. And rather than discharge me, which is what they very likely could have done, they went ahead and retired me. So it was as if I had completed my 20. So that was a blessing. There was doubt. There could have been doubt, but I knew the whole time that God was going to take care of me and my family. Okay, so let's take that to its next step. Now I'm retired. Now I have to move to Arizona. I was in Washington State, or not I, we, my family and I were in Washington State, and the plan was to move to Arizona. Well, I don't know anybody in Arizona, and my conditions are still pretty severe. I don't know anybody in the church there. I don't know where we're going to live. I don't know. So there's a lot of unknown. I don't know how I'm going to support my family. I don't know. So I can either panic or rely on God. God had gotten me through so many things up to that point that my faith was really strong. Now, I was concerned, but I didn't doubt. And as a result, here I sit now I'm just about to complete my college degree. You know, my kids are doing well. They're in school. The pantries are full. We've bought a house. We've been blessed immensely. God not only took us from losing my career and possibly walking away with nothing to a situation now where I have full medical insurance for the rest of my life and my family's life, until they're 21, the kids, or 26 if they're in college. And so God took care of the whole thing. Now, if I had doubted, how do you think that would have turned out? I wouldn't have received that I wanted, according to James here. And so I encourage you, the next time you're in a bit of a pickle, a bit of a tight spot, just pray and believe that God is in control, that he's going to take care of you because he loves you and he loves me and he wants what's best for us. And it might be a little while before we hear the answer, but ultimately, if we believe, God will take care of us. And there's loads of scripture about that. So a couple of people have said that they want that topic list, or that scripture list. I will fire that off. If you want it, remember how to get a hold of me. We are now 1.5 minutes over, so it's time for me to clam up and let you go. Thank you for tuning in. It is an encouragement to me when I hear how many people this has reached. Please let me know what you think. Add the comments. If you disagree with anything I had to say, please let me know. I want this to be a conversation, as I say just about every show. One thing I would like to point out is if you could watch this on YouTube, you could watch it on Facebook, but if you go to the discipleslife.tv, not only can you see the current show or today's show, but if you click on the shows link at the top, you can see all of the shows that we've got planned. There's 6 of them total planned. One of them is active, this one. And if you click on that button, it will take you to the archives where you can search by keyword. You can do just a search. You can watch all of the shows in order, or better yet, subscribe. Hit that subscribe link at the top and subscribe to the podcast. That way it just gets delivered to your inbox every day. So that's it. I'm gonna let you go. Now we're 2.5 minutes over. I just gotta stop. I just can't stop. I'm just so fired up. Love you guys. Pray today, okay? Pray about your future. Pray about this show. Pray about whatever's on your mind. We love you. Have a great, amazing day. Enjoy your walk with God.